Hello friends, today's story will be Inside the Haunted Wonderland House, Murder and Dark Secrets.
The local cafe was filled with the aromas of fresh coffee and freshly baked pastries. Sarah, with her reddish brown hair tied up in a messy bun, was excitedly gesturing to her friends. I heard that the Wonderland house has been abandoned for years. We need to go there and film everything. Just imagine the content we could create, she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with the idea. Jake, the skeptic of the group, raised an eyebrow. You know those ghost stories are just legends, right? Just because the house is old doesn't mean it's haunted. Plus, it's dangerous to go into a place like that at night. Emily, who had always been the more timid one, bit her lower lip. What if something really happens? What if there are spirits in there? I don't know if I can handle that, she murmured, staring into the bottom of her coffee cup as if expecting to find answers there. Tom, who had an adventurous spirit, smiled at Sarah. Count me in. It'll be a great opportunity for a horror vlog. Let's show everyone how brave we are. He winked at Emily, trying to cheer her up. You're not going to let fear get the best of you, are you? After a few minutes of discussion, Jake made a resigned face. All right, let's do this. But if something happens, I'm holding you all accountable. The group laughed, feeling the adrenaline start to rise. Satisfied, Sarah grabbed her phone to check the lighting for the vlog. As the sun began to set, they headed to the mansion. Upon arriving, the atmosphere around the house felt heavy, almost palpable. The structure, covered in vines and with dusty windows, seemed to watch them. Look at this. It's perfect, Sarah said as she filmed. However, Jake couldn't shake the shiver down his spine. Let's go. We can't let this scare us, he said, trying to hide his discomfort. As they crossed the creaking gate, Emily suddenly stopped, feeling a chill. Don't you feel that? It's like someone is watching us, she whispered, glancing around. Tom gave her shoulder a reassuring pat. It's just your imagination, Em. Let's go inside and get this over with. As soon as they crossed the front door, they were greeted by a dark and silent hall, filled with furniture covered in white sheets. Sarah turned on her phone's flashlight, illuminating an old table cluttered with dusty objects and pictures of a family in wooden frames. Wow, look at this, she said, moving closer to the photos, while Jake rolled his eyes. Those photos don't mean anything. Let's focus on what really matters. However, when Tom stepped away from the table, something caught his attention. A slightly ajar door, almost hidden, seemed to beckon them to explore. Hey, come here. I think I found something. He pushed the door open, revealing a dark basement that emanated a smell of mold and despair. The group hesitated, exchanging nervous glances, but curiosity proved stronger than fear. Let's go. What are we waiting for? Urged Tom, while Sarah turned on the flashlight, ready to uncover the mysteries that the House of Wonderland held. In the dark, damp basement of the House of Wonderland, the group of friends gathered around a dusty diary that Tom had discovered. It was covered in dust and looked like it had been forgotten for years. With her heart racing, Sarah opened the book and began to read aloud. Dear Isabella, the passage began, today was the day the game of secrets began. Mom says that everyone must reveal something they're hiding, something that could change everything. A game? What does that mean? Jake questioned, raising an eyebrow and crossing his arms, still skeptical. This is nothing more than a child's invention. We can't believe everything we read. But what if there's some truth to it? Emily interjected, her voice trembling. The diary belongs to the family's daughter, Isabella. She disappeared, Jake. This is serious. Tom, glancing at the yellowed page, suggested, what if we hold a seance? We could try to connect with Isabella and understand what happened. The silence in the room was heavy, and the expressions on their friends' faces varied between doubt and fear. Why not? What do we have to lose? Sarah replied, determined. If this helps us understand what happened here, I'm in. Reluctantly, the friends agreed. They moved to the living room, where the atmosphere felt even heavier. The light from the flashlight flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Jake took the lead, trying to keep the environment under control. Okay, let's do this quickly. I don't want to be here longer than necessary. As they sat in a circle, Tom began to light some candles, illuminating the space with a flickering glow. Everyone ready? He asked, looking at his friends, who nodded, though the tension was palpable. Isabella, if you're here, please make your presence known, Jake called out, his voice echoing in the silence. The group waited, but nothing happened. The air felt heavy, as if the house were holding its breath. Then, suddenly, a soft whisper permeated the environment. "Jake." The voice, almost inaudible, made everyone shudder. "Was that you?" Sarah asked, her eyes wide. "No, it wasn't," Jake replied, confused and uneasy. He abruptly stood up, as if pulled by an invisible force, and began to speak in a distant tone. "The secrets are buried, but not forever. They will return." The friends looked at each other, terrified. What was happening to Jake? He seemed to be in a trance, and the words spilling from his mouth were foreign to him. The room fell into a deathly silence, where fear and curiosity intertwined as the truth of the house began to unfold. Jake was in a trance, his eyes lost in the darkness of the room as if seeing something beyond the material world. His voice, strange and deep, echoed off the walls of the Wonderland house. The house was the scene of a massacre, a night of blood. They didn't deserve it. They shouldn't have lived. The group, in shock, exchanged terrified glances. Sarah, with a trembling hand, tried to shake her friend. "Jake, wake up. This isn't you," she pleaded, but he continued to speak, as if possessed by an invisible force. "Hatred runs through the veins of this house. They were deceived, betrayed." Emily, her heart racing, felt a chill run down her spine. "What is he saying?" she whispered to Tom, who looked as pale as a sheet of paper. "We need to get him out of here. This isn't right." "Jake, you're scaring us," Tom shouted, but there was no response. Jake's expression was that of a man who knew deadly secrets, and the tension in the room was palpable. "Jake, listen. You need to come back to us," Sarah shouted again, her voice trembling. At that moment, a distant sobbing reached Emily's ears. It was a soft, almost melancholic sound that seemed to emanate from the walls. "What was that?" she asked, distracted by curiosity. "Did you all hear it?" "Forget that, Emily. Stay here," Tom replied, but her determination spoke louder. With a quick movement, she pulled away from the group and began to follow the sound. The darkness enveloped her as she moved deeper into the house. Finally, Emily reached a locked room. The door creaked as she pushed it open, revealing a dusty, shadowy space. In the center, an old doll sat in a chair, its eyes seeming to glow with a life of their own. "What are you doing here?" the doll seemed to ask, and Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. "I'm looking for answers," she murmured, unsure if she was speaking to the doll or to herself. In response, the doll appeared to point toward a collection of dusty letters on a nearby table. Curious, Emily approached and began to sift through the papers, uncovering a forbidden romance between Isabella and a secret lover. The passionate words, written in elegant handwriting, spoke of furtive meetings and shattered dreams, revealing a love that might have triggered the tragedy that befell the house. This could be important, she whispered to herself, as a new sense of urgency washed over her. Emily knew she needed to go back and share what she had discovered, but the fear of the darkness and the secrets the house held wrapped around her like a dense fog. The distant crying still echoed in her ears, as if the house itself was calling out to her, pleading for the truth to finally come to light. In the living room of the House of Wonders, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation and tension. Sarah looked at her friends, feeling adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Let's play the game of secrets. The love cards might help us understand what happened here," she said, holding the worn cards that belonged to Isabella. Tom, nervous, bit his lip. "Are you sure? This could end badly. We need this, Tom. The house has already shown us it's not a normal place. We have to open up," Jake replied, trying to hide the anxiety in his voice, but his gaze betrayed a mix of curiosity and fear. Emily, with a trembling voice, added, "If it's for that, then so be it. But I don't know if I'm ready to reveal my secrets." "We all have something to hide," Sarah said, her gaze challenging. She began to deal the cards, and as each person spoke, the atmosphere grew heavier. "I'll start," Jake announced, taking a deep breath. "Once, I lied to a friend about where I was. He trusted me and he ended up getting into trouble because of it." The confession left an uncomfortable silence hanging in the air. "What if that's not all, Jake? What aren't you telling us?" Tom pressed, suspicion evident in his voice. Jake looked away, but before he could respond, Sarah grabbed a card and, with a steady voice, began her own revelation. "I never told you, but I was responsible for a car accident. I didn't hurt anyone, but I ran away from the scene. Ever since that day, I've lived in fear that someone would find out." Sarah's words lingered like an echo, and the tension escalated. In a burst of impulse, Emily decided to share. I can't stop thinking that if something happens, it will be my fault. Whenever I'm near someone, I fear that something bad will happen, as if I attract evil." Tom, realizing it was time to open his own heart, took a deep breath before speaking. "I have a dark past. I was arrested once for theft, but it wasn't just that. I did things I'm ashamed of." Tom's confession felt like a weight lifted off his shoulders, but the expressions on his friends' faces showed that he had crossed a dangerous line. Suddenly, the house began to tremble. The lights flickered wildly, creating an atmosphere of panic. "What's happening?" Emily shouted as she instinctively stepped away from the wall. A dark shadow began to form, dancing on the walls of the room. The figure took shape, and a piercing scream echoed through the mansion, sending everyone into a panic. "Get out. You shouldn't be here." The voice sounded like a lament of pain and anger, reverberating in the hearts of the friends. "We need to leave. Now." Sarah yelled, but the door seemed locked, as if the house were determined to keep them there. The oppressive atmosphere surrounded them, and the feeling that darker secrets were yet to come hung over them. The tension in the House of Wonders was palpable. The group, not understanding how they had become prisoners of the place, exchanged desperate glances. The doors had locked, and the echo of distant laughter reverberated through the worn walls. Sarah, with a trembling voice, said, "We have to get out of here. Someone, please, try to open the door." Jake, still under the influence of what had happened during the seance, walked toward the broken mirror hanging on the wall. "Look at this," he exclaimed, pointing at the shattered reflections. The distorted visions showed not only their faces but also their deepest fears. Emily saw herself alone in a dark corridor. Tom relived his grim past, and Sarah faced the guilt of bringing them to this place. "What do these images mean?" Tom asked, his voice faltering. The atmosphere seemed to compress, as if the house were feeding on their despair. Suddenly, a shadow projected onto the opposite wall. "Emily," whispered a soft voice, yet it resonated with a weight of sadness. The young woman, entranced, began to move away from the group. "It's her. It's the entity I saw before," she shouted, but it was too late. The shadow materialized into a female figure, dressed in an old-fashioned gown, her skin pale as the moon. You are Isabella?" Emily asked hesitantly. "Yes, and you are all connected to me," the entity replied, her voice echoing like a lament. "The tragedy that occurred here was not just an accident. Each of you carries a fragment of what happened. Only by facing your fears can you break this cycle." Sarah, tears in her eyes, intervened. "How can we help you? What must we do?" Isabella looked at them, a mix of pain and hope in her gaze. "You need to understand the truth behind the betrayal that led to my death. This house is a maze of secrets, and until they are revealed, you will never escape." Tom, trying to remain calm, asked, "And what if we can't? What if the secrets are more than we can bear?" "So," Isabella said, her tone grim, "you will be doomed to relive the pain eternally." The entity began to blur, but its intense gaze remained fixed on the friends. "Find the truth. Only then can you free your souls and mine." The group was in shock, the weight of their actions was beginning to sink in. They knew that their only way out now was to confront their own demons and unravel the mysteries that the house held. The atmosphere in the House of Wonders was thick with tension and despair. The group, now aware of the dangers surrounding them, prepared to face the truth. Jake, with a distant look in his eyes, seemed restless, as if he were battling forces he couldn't even comprehend. Sarah, noticing the change in her friend, asked with a trembling voice, "Jake, are you okay? What's happening to you?" He turned slowly, his eyes shining with a dark intensity. "I'm not who you think I am," Jake replied, his voice echoing like a shadow. "I am part of this house, part of the tragedy that happened here. My family's story. It never ended." The group exchanged confused and alarmed glances, while Emily, already hesitant, stepped closer. "Jake, you're talking about things we don't understand," she said, trying to keep calm. "We need you with us. We can't let her win." But Jake shook his head, a sad smile forming on his lips. "You can't save me. What happened here needs to be resolved. It's a cycle, and I'm the key." At that moment, The entity that had previously manifested as Isabella appeared, shrouded in a dark mist. "You are the true bearer of the legacy, Jake," the ethereal voice declared, echoing off the walls of the mansion. "Only you can decide whether to continue this game or break the curse." The house began to tremble, and the friends felt the ground vibrate beneath their feet. "Jake, you have to fight. Don't let this take you," Tom shouted, but the mist began to envelop Jake, pulling him slowly. He looked at his friends, tears welling in his eyes. "I'm sorry. I didn't want this to happen." "No. Don't do it," Emily screamed, reaching out in an attempt to grasp him. The mist seemed to intensify, and the house started to crumble around them. The walls shifted, and the air grew thick and heavy. "Choose. Save Jake or escape," the entity whispered, its voice piercing into everyone's mind. With one last cry of desperation, Jake vanished into the mist, leaving only an echo of his presence. The friends, in a surge of survival instinct, ran toward the door. Before they could leave, a message appeared on the old door, written in shaky handwriting: "The game is not over. Let's return to uncover the truth." The house, now in ruins, seemed to breathe again, the hallways rearranging as if it were re-establishing itself. The group, exhausted and traumatized, had managed to escape, but the feeling that the true battle was yet to come lingered over them. The terror in the House of Wonderland was far from over.
Leave your comment and subscribe to the channel. Enjoy and see other stories on the channel. See you in the next story, if you dare.